The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around Dr. Lisa Morgan's boots as she walked toward the strange structure jutting from the canyon wall. She had been on this planet for 3 weeks now, searching for signs of ancient life. Most days brought nothing but rocks and disappointment. Today felt different. The structure looked like nothing she had ever seen before. It was made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to drink in the light from the twin suns overhead. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with blue light. Lisa pulled out her scanner and ran it over the metal. The readings made no sense. The material was older than anything humans had ever discovered. "Base camp, this is Lisa," she spoke into her radio. "I found something big down here." Static crackled back. "What kind of big?" came the voice of Dr. Kevin Hayes from the research station above. "The kind that's going to change everything we know about this galaxy." Lisa found what looked like a doorway, though it had no handle or visible opening mechanism. She pressed, her hand against the smooth surface. The metal was warm to the touch. Suddenly the symbols flared brighter, and the walls simply melted away like water. Inside, the structure was much larger than it appeared from outside. The walls curved upward into darkness, covered in more of the glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood a pillar made of clear crystal. As Lisa approached, lights began dancing inside the crystal like trapped lightning. She reached out carefully and touched the pillar. The world exploded into light and sound. Images flooded her mind. She saw vast cities floating among the stars, filled with beings that looked almost like humans, but taller and more graceful. She saw massive ships traveling between worlds, carrying knowledge and peace. She saw the faces of the beings who had built this place, the Valix, as they called themselves. But then the images turned dark. Something was coming from the space between galaxies, something hungry and terrible. The Valix fought bravely, but their enemy was too strong. As their civilization fell, they scattered warnings across the galaxy, hoping someone would find them in time. The crystal showed her the warning clearly. When the star spawn of Sol reach beyond their third moon, the devourers will wake. The young species must unite, or all will fall to the endless hunger. Lisa jerked her hand back, gasping. The crystal continued to glow softly, as if waiting for her to touch it again. She knew she had to get this information back to Earth immediately. 2 weeks later, Lisa stood before the Galactic Council on the space station Harmony. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the great chamber. The Zephyrians sat in their military uniforms, their gray skin and 4 arms making them look like natural warriors. The Altarians floated in their environmental suits, their gas-filled bodies shimmering like living clouds. The Nexari clicked and buzzed as they spoke, their insect-like appearance hiding brilliant technological minds. "Dr. Morgan," said Ambassador, Vextar of the Zephyrians, his voice carrying the authority of a military commander. "You claim to have found a warning from an extinct species. Why should we take this seriously?" Lisa activated the holographic display. The crystal's recording played for all to see. The aliens watched the rise and fall of the Valix civilization with interest. But when the warning about the devourers appeared, many began to fidget and whisper among themselves. "This is clearly primitive superstition," announced Counselor Jara of the Altarians, her translated voice echoing through the chamber. "The Valix were obviously destroyed by war or disease. They created this fantasy about space monsters to explain their failure. The technology in these ruins is far beyond primitive," Lisa argued. "The Valix were more advanced than any of us. If they left this warning, we should listen." The Nexari representative, hive speaker Kakurt, made the rapid clicking sounds that indicated disagreement. The mathematical probability of such creatures existing is extremely low. We have explored much of this galaxy and found no evidence of these devourers. In the back of the chamber, Captain Jake Sullivan of the human exploration vessel Aurora listened carefully. He had spent years in deep space and had seen things that didn't fit into neat scientific categories. Something about Dr. Morgan's discovery felt true to him. What if she's right? Jake spoke up, standing from his seat. What if this warning is real? Can we afford to ignore it? Ambassador Vextar's forearms gestured dismissively. Captain Sullivan, humans have been part of this galactic community for barely 50 years. You lack the experience to understand these matters. Maybe that's exactly why you should listen to us, Jake replied. We don't have thousands of years of assumptions clouding our judgment. The debate continued for hours. Some species wanted to investigate further, but most agreed with the Zephyrians and Altarians. The warning was filed away as an interesting archaeological discovery, but nothing more. Lisa left the council chambers feeling defeated. She had shown them clear evidence of an ancient threat, but their pride and certainty had blinded them to the danger. Captain Sullivan caught up with her. In the corridor. I believe you, he said simply. This warning means something. Then you're one of the few, Lisa replied bitterly. They think because they've been spacefaring for millennia, they know everything about the galaxy. In my experience, the moment you think you know everything is the moment something proves. You wrong, Jake said. I'm going to start monitoring the outer systems more carefully. If these devourers are real, we need to be ready. As they talked, neither of them noticed the news report playing on a nearby screen. Humanity had just announced the completion of its first permanent research station on Europa, Jupiter's moon. The reporter smiled as she explained how this achievement marked humanity's expansion beyond its third moon from the sun. 50,000 light-years away, at the very edge of the galaxy, something ancient and terrible began to stir. The devourers had slept long enough. The warning of the Vilix was about to come true, and the galaxy was completely unprepared for what was coming. The crystal on Kepler 442b pulsed once with bright light, as if trying to send one final desperate message across the void. But there was no one left to listen. The countdown to Galactic War had begun. Commander Amy Rodriguez stared at the readings on her screen for the third time, hoping they would somehow make more sense. The deep space monitoring station Cerberus floated in the darkness between star systems, its powerful sensors always watching for threats from the void. In her 5 years as station commander, Amy had seen asteroids, comets, and the occasional alien ship, but nothing like this. "Run the scan again," she told her sensor officer, Lieutenant Chris Ward. "Ma'am, I've run it 6 times already. The readings are consistent," Chris replied, his young face creased with worry. "There's something massive moving out there, about 50,000 light-years from our position." Amy looked at the display again. The energy signature was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. But it was moving in ways that no natural object could. It changed direction without slowing down, accelerated without any visible propulsion, and seemed to be heading toward the galaxy's inhabited systems. "Could it be a ship?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim, the station science officer. "Not like any ship we've ever seen," Amy answered. "The energy output is off the charts. And look at this pattern." She pointed to the screen where multiple contacts appeared to be moving together. "There's more than one of them. The monitoring station had been humanity's contribution to galactic defense, positioned at the very edge of known space to watch for threats. Most alien species considered it a waste of resources, believing that space was empty beyond their borders. Now Amy was beginning to understand why someone might want to keep watch. "Commander," Chris said suddenly, his voice tight with fear. "The contacts are multiplying. I'm reading dozens of them now, all heading this way." Amy felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered Dr. Lisa Morgan's presentation to the Galactic Council 3 months ago. The woman had seemed so certain about her ancient warning, so desperate to make them understand. At the time, even Amy had thought it might be just archaeological wishful thinking. Now she wasn't so sure. "Send an immediate message to Earth and the Galactic Council," Amy ordered. "Priority Alpha. Tell them we have unknown contacts approaching from deep space." While her communications officer sent the message, Amy tried to contact Captain Jake Sullivan on the exploration vessel Aurora. Jake had been the only one to take Dr. Morgan's warning seriously, and Amy trusted his judgment more than most. "Aurora, this is Cerberus. We need to talk." Jake's voice came back clear and calm. "I'm here, Amy. Let me guess. You're seeing things that shouldn't exist?" "How did you know?" "Because I've been monitoring the outer rim systems, and 3 of them have gone dark in the past week. No distress signals, no explanations. They just stopped transmitting." Amy felt her heart start beating faster. "Jake, I think Dr. Morgan was right. I think the Devourers are real." The first official response came from the Galactic Council 12 hours later. Ambassador Helen Carter, humanity's representative, had been ordered to investigate the reports personally. She arrived on the diplomatic ship Horizon with a small fleet of council vessels, including 2 Zephyrian warships. "Commander Rodriguez," Ambassador Carter said as she boarded Cerberus. "Show me what you've found." Amy led the ambassador and her alien escorts to the sensor station. The readings were even more disturbing now. The unknown contacts had moved closer, and their energy signatures were growing stronger. "These readings make no sense," declared General Thexmore of the Zephyrian fleet, his 4 arms crossed in disbelief. "No living creature could generate this much energy." "Maybe they're not living," suggested Dr. Kim. "At least not in any way we understand." Ambassador Carter studied the displays carefully. She was a diplomat, not a scientist. But she had learned to read people and situations. The fear in the room was real, and the data seemed to support Dr. Morgan's ancient warning. "We need to get closer," she decided. "Take a small ship and investigate directly." "Ma'am, I strongly advise against that," Amy said. "We don't know what these things are capable of, which is exactly why we need to find out." The investigation ship launched 6 hours later. Ambassador Carter led the mission personally, along with Captain Jake Sullivan and a team of scientists from various species. The Zephyrian warships followed at a distance, ready to provide support if needed. As they traveled toward the energy signatures, the space around them began to feel different. The stars seemed dimmer, and their instruments started showing strange readings. The closer they got, the more apparent it became that something was terribly wrong. "Contact ahead," announced the ship's pilot, Lieutenant Tom Baker. "Visual range in 30 seconds. When the image appeared on their screens, everyone fell silent. The thing floating before them was like nothing in their worst nightmares. It was vast and organic-looking, but clearly artificial. Its surface was covered in what looked like technological components, but they seemed to be grown rather than built. Massive tentacles writhed from its sides, each one the size of a battleship. "It's feeding," whispered Dr. Elena Ross, the mission's xenobiologist. Look at the energy patterns. It's consuming the space around it, breaking down matter at the atomic level. As they watched in horror, smaller creatures detached from the main body. They looked like twisted versions of the large one, but they moved with purpose and intelligence. One of them turned toward their ship. It sees us, Jake said quietly. All stop. Don't make any sudden movements. The creature approached slowly, its surface rippling with patterns of light. When it was close enough, something incredible happened. Images began appearing in their minds, not their own thoughts, but something being forced into their consciousness. They saw worlds being consumed, entire star systems being broken down and converted into energy. They saw civilizations fleeing in terror as vast swarms of these creatures swept across the galaxy like a plague. They saw the final desperate battles of species they had never heard of, all ending in defeat and consumption. "Devourers," Amy whispered, the word coming to her unbidden. "They're the Devourers from the Valix warning." The creature in front of them suddenly pulsed with bright light. Their ship's systems began failing one by one. The hull started making strange creaking sounds as if something was trying to break it down from the outside. "Emergency jump!" Jake shouted. "Get us out of here now!" Lieutenant Baker's hands flew over the controls. The ship's jump drive engaged just as the creature reached out with one of its smaller appendages. They escaped into hyperspace with barely seconds to spare. When they dropped back into normal space near Cerberus, their ship was heavily damaged. The hull showed signs of some kind of molecular breakdown, and several crew members had to be taken. "To the medical bay. Send a message to the Galactic Council," Ambassador Carter ordered, her face pale but determined. "Tell them the Devourers are real. They're coming, and we need to prepare for war immediately." But even as the message was sent, reports began coming in from across the galaxy. The outer rim systems weren't just going dark. They were being systematically destroyed. The Devourers had begun their advance, and they moved faster than anyone had imagined possible. The ancient warning had come true. The galaxy's greatest nightmare was no longer a myth from the past. It was bearing down on them with unstoppable hunger, and most of the galactic community still didn't believe it was real. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major species crowded into the chamber on Harmony Station, their voices raised in panic and disbelief. The great holographic display at the center showed the rim of the galaxy, where red markers indicated systems that had gone silent in the past week. General Ben Jackson stood at the human delegation table, watching the chaos unfold around him. As Earth's top military strategist, he had seen his share of wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The reports coming in from the outer systems were beyond imagination. "The Kepler sector is completely gone," announced Admiral Zexka of the Altarian fleet, her translated voice shaking with fear. 12 inhabited worlds, 3 billion people, all consumed in less than 48 hours. "Impossible," declared Commander Vorth of the Nexari Defense Force. "No force in the galaxy could move that quickly." "Tell that to the refugees," Ben said grimly. He activated his personal display, showing the few scattered ships that had escaped the Kepler sector. "These are the only survivors we've found. They're telling the same story everywhere. Massive creatures that eat entire planets." Dr. Kevin Hayes stepped forward from the human scientific team. His face was drawn with exhaustion from analyzing the data they had collected. "We've confirmed it. These entities don't just destroy, they convert matter into energy and use it. to create more of themselves. Every planet they consume makes them stronger. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some species demanded immediate military action, while others insisted on trying diplomatic contact. The Zephyrians wanted to mobilize their entire fleet, but the Nexari claimed it would be suicide to attack something they didn't understand. In the middle of the chaos, a new alarm sounded. The great display updated with fresh data, and the room fell silent. The Rigel system, home to the mighty Zephyrian military academy, was under attack. "That's impossible," whispered General Thexmore, his forearms trembling. "Rigel has the strongest defenses in the galaxy. 3 full battle fleets protect that system." The display showed energy readings unlike anything they had ever seen. Massive spikes of power indicated a battle of unprecedented scale. Then, suddenly, the readings flatlined. Rigel was silent. 3 days, Ben said quietly. From first contact to total destruction in 3 days. These things aren't just powerful. They're learning from each fight. Dr. Hayes pulled up his analysis on the main screen. Based on the pattern of attacks, they're not moving randomly. They're targeting the most heavily defended systems first, learning our tactics and capabilities. Each victory makes them smarter and stronger. "How many of them are there?" asked Counselor Jara of the Altarians. "We don't know," Ben admitted. "Our long-range sensors show hundreds of contacts, but they might be splitting and multiplying as they advance. By the time they reach the core, worlds, there could be thousands." The reality of their situation began to sink in. The greatest military powers in the galaxy were being swept aside like insects. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet, which had maintained peace for over 1,000 years, had been destroyed in less than a week. If these devourers could do that, what hope did anyone have? "We need to evacuate the outer colonies immediately," suggested Ambassador Helen Carter. "Get as many people as possible to the inner systems where we can make a stand." "Where exactly do you propose we make this stand?" asked Admiral Zexka bitterly. "These creatures have destroyed everything we've thrown at them. Our most advanced weapons don't even slow them down." Ben studied the tactical display, his military mind racing through possibilities. He had spent his entire career preparing for war against other civilized species. Enemies that followed rules, that had weaknesses, that could be outmaneuvered or outwitted. But these devourers operated by completely different principles. "We need more information," he decided. "How did the Valix fight them? Dr. Morgan found their warning. Maybe she found something else we can use." Dr. Lisa Morgan was contacted immediately. She had returned to Kepler 442b to search for more Valix ruins, driven by the knowledge that her discovery might be the galaxy's only hope. When Ben's message reached her, she was deep in the crystal chamber trying to unlock more of the ancient records. "The Valix fought for over a century," Lisa reported from the ruins. "They had weapons we can't even imagine, technology that could reshape matter at the quantum level. But it wasn't enough. The Devourers adapted to everything they tried." Then, "How do we stop them?" Ben asked desperately. "I don't think the Valix expected anyone to stop them," Lisa replied, her voice heavy with realization. "I think they expected someone to survive them. The warning wasn't about defeating the Devourers, it was about preparing for what comes after they finish feeding." The implications of her words hit the Council like a physical blow. If the mighty Valix couldn't stop these creatures, what chance did the current galactic civilization have? As if summoned by their despair, new reports began flooding in. Devourers had reached the Centauri cluster, one of the most populous regions in the galaxy. The attack wasn't like the previous ones. It was coordinated, simultaneous, and devastating. 50-star systems came under assault at the same time. Ben watched the tactical display update in real time, each red marker representing billions of lives lost. The creatures were no longer just consuming randomly. They were implementing strategy. They had learned enough about galactic civilization to target its key points simultaneously. "They're cutting off our escape routes," he realized with growing horror. "They're not just hunting us, they're hurting us." Dr. Hayes confirmed his worst fears. The attack pattern is designed to drive survivors toward the galactic core. They're concentrating the population in a smaller area, making it easier to consume everyone at once, Ben finished grimly. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The galaxy's greatest civilizations, which had considered themselves the masters of space, were being hunted like prey animals. The Devourers weren't just monsters. They were intelligent, strategic, and utterly ruthless. "There has to be something we can do," insisted Commander Vorth of the Nexari. "Some weakness we can exploit." Ben looked around the chamber at the representatives of dozens of species, all of them afraid and desperate. For thousands of years, they had maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming force. Now they faced an enemy that turned their own strength against them. "Maybe there is," he said slowly, an idea beginning to form. "Dr. Morgan, you said the Valix warning mentioned star spawn of Sol. They were talking about humans specifically." "Why?" Lisa's voice crackled through the communication system. "I'm not sure yet, but I'm finding references to something they called the adaptive mind and the chaos doctrine. They seemed to think humans had something the other species lacked. What could humans possibly have that more advanced species don't?" asked General Thexmore skeptically. Ben smiled grimly, remembering his years of studying military history. "Maybe the answer isn't what we have, it's what we don't have. We don't have thousands of years of military tradition. We don't have set ways of thinking about warfare. We're still learning, still adapting." "You think our inexperience is an advantage?" Admiral Zexka asked incredulously. "I think our unpredictability might be the only thing these creatures haven't learned to counter yet," Ben replied. "They've defeated every established military doctrine in the galaxy, but they've never fought someone who makes up the rules as they go along." It was a desperate hope, but it was all they had. As the reports continued to pour in and the red markers spread across the galactic map like a plague, Ben Jackson began to formulate the most important strategy of his life. Humanity was about to discover whether chaos could triumph over perfect order, whether adaptation could overcome absolute power. The fate of every living being in the galaxy would depend on whether one young species could do what all the ancient civilizations had failed to accomplish, find a way to fight the unfightable. Admiral Claire Thompson stood before the assembled leaders of the Galactic Council, her hands clasped behind her back in perfect military posture. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched with mixtures of desperation and skepticism. The past month had been a nightmare of constant retreats and devastating losses. Nearly a quarter of the galaxy was now dark, consumed by the relentless advance of the Devourers. "You're asking us to put a human in charge of our combined forces?" Ambassador Kextal of the Nexari clicked incredulously. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. Our species has also never lost a war to something we couldn't understand," Claire replied calmly. "Can any of you say the same?" The silence that followed was telling. Every major military power in the galaxy had tried their traditional tactics against the Devourers. The Zephyrian battle formations had been shattered. The Altarian strategic doctrines had proven useless. The Nexari technological superiority had been turned against them. Everything that had worked for thousands of years was failing. General Ben Jackson stepped forward to support his admiral. "We're not asking you to trust us because we're better than you. We're asking you to trust us because we're different from you. The Devourers have learned to counter every established military tradition in the galaxy, but they've never faced human tactics." "What makes human tactics so special?" demanded General Thexmore, his forearms crossed in frustration. "Chaos," Ben answered simply. "Every other species in this galaxy has had time to perfect their military doctrines, to establish traditions and rules of warfare. Humans are still figuring things out as we go. We improvise, we adapt, we break our own rules when they stop working." Dr. Lisa Morgan's voice joined the discussion through the communication system. She was still on Kepler 442b working frantically to unlock more Valix secrets. "I found more references in the ruins. The Valix called humans the unbound minds. They believed our lack of rigid thinking patterns was crucial to fighting the Devourers." "Unbound from what?" asked Counselor Jara of the Altarians. "From certainty," Lisa replied. "Every other species develops absolute confidence in their methods over time. Humans are still young enough to doubt themselves, to try new things when the old things fail." Claire saw the doubt in their eyes and decided to be brutally honest. "Look, we all know the situation is hopeless if we keep doing what we've been doing. The Devourers are learning faster than we can adapt using traditional methods. Give us command, and we might lose, but at least we'll lose doing something they haven't seen before." The debate that followed was intense. Some species argued that humanity was too inexperienced to handle such responsibility. Others pointed out that experience hadn't helped anyone so far. In the end, it was the arrival of refugee ships from the Vega sector that settled the matter. Captain Ryan Blake brought his damaged vessel into the docking bay of Harmony Station, carrying the last survivors from 3 conquered worlds. His report to the Council was devastating. "They're not just consuming anymore," Ryan said, his voice hollow with exhaustion. "They're experimenting. I watched them capture Zephyrian warships and study them for hours before absorbing them. They're learning. Our technology, our tactics, everything." "How many did you see?" Claire asked. "Hundreds of the large ones, thousands of smaller scouts. But Admiral, they were coordinating like nothing we've seen before. Perfect formations, flawless timing. It was like watching a single mind controlling an entire fleet. The implications were terrifying. The Devourers weren't just powerful. They were becoming more intelligent with every victory. Traditional military thinking was not only useless against them, it was actively dangerous because it was predictable. "Humanity will take command," announced Ambassador Helen Carter after a hurried consultation with Earth. "Admiral Thompson will coordinate all galactic defense efforts." "This is madness," muttered Commander Vorth of the Nexari, but he didn't object further. Even he could see that madness might be their only hope. Claire wasted no time in establishing her new command structure. Unlike the rigid hierarchies preferred by other species, she created flexible units that could operate independently or combine as needed. Human officers were placed in key positions, not because they outranked their alien counterparts, but because they thought differently. Lieutenant Commander Paul White was given command of the 1st Joint Human-Alien Task Force. His mission was to test new tactics against Devourer scout groups while the main fleets prepared for larger engagements. Paul had studied every available report on Devourer behavior and had noticed something interesting. "They adapt to whatever they face," he explained to his mixed crew of humans, Zephyrians and Nexari. "But they seem to need time to process new information. If we can hit them with something completely unexpected and then change tactics before they adapt, we might have a chance." His first test came 3 days later when sensors detected a small group of Devourers approaching an evacuation convoy. Instead of the standard defensive formation, Paul spread his ships out in an apparently random pattern. When the Devourers attacked, expecting organized resistance, they found chaos. Human ships darted in and out of the enemy formation, firing at seemingly random targets. Zephyrian vessels provided covering fire from angles that made no tactical sense. Nexari fighters swarmed around the Devourers in patterns that seemed more like dancing than warfare. To everyone's amazement, it worked. The Devourers, programmed to counter logical military tactics, struggled to respond to actions that followed no recognizable pattern. For the first time since the war began, a galactic force successfully destroyed Devourer units without taking catastrophic losses. "It's not perfect," Paul reported back to Claire. "They started adapting by the end of the fight, but for about 10 minutes we had them completely confused. 10 minutes. It wasn't much, but it was more than anyone else had achieved." Claire began developing what she called adaptive chaos doctrine, military tactics that changed constantly and followed, no set patterns. Meanwhile, Dr. Morgan made a breakthrough in the Valix ruins. Deep beneath the crystal chamber, she found something that changed everything, a hidden vault filled with weapons and technology specifically designed to fight the Devourers. "These aren't just weapons," she reported excitedly. "They're adaptive. Systems that change their function based on what they're fighting. The Valix built them to evolve in real time. Dr. Kevin Hayes led the team studying the ancient weapons. What they found was beyond their current understanding. Technology that seemed to operate on principles of controlled chaos, systems that worked better when they were unpredictable. It's like they built uncertainty into the design," Kevin explained. "These weapons don't just have multiple settings, they randomly select from thousands of possible configurations. No two shots are exactly the same." "Can we reproduce them?" Claire asked. "Not exactly, but we can adapt the principles to our existing technology. It would mean rebuilding our entire arsenal, but it might be our only chance." As the humans worked to implement Valix chaos tech into their weapons, more reports came in from around the galaxy. The Devourers had noticed the change in tactics and were adapting accordingly, but they seemed confused by the randomness of human strategy. "They're pattern recognition machines," Ben realized during a strategy meeting. "They learn by identifying what their enemies do consistently. But humans aren't consistent. We're chaotic, unpredictable, and we change our minds constantly." "Are you saying our greatest weakness as a species is actually our greatest strength?" asked Dr. Sarah Kim from Cerberus Station. "I'm saying that maybe the Valix were right about us," Ben replied. "Maybe we're not here to be another civilized species with perfect military doctrine. Maybe we're here to be the chaos that breaks their perfect order." The first major test of human command came when the Devourers launched a massive assault on the Procyon system. Claire had 3 days to prepare her forces and implement her new doctrine. Instead of trying to defend every world, she did something that horrified her alien allies. She concentrated all her forces around one planet and completely abandoned the others. "You're sacrificing billions of people," General Thexmore accused. "I'm saving the species that live beyond Procyon," Claire replied. If we spread out, they'll destroy us piece by piece. If we concentrate our forces and make them come to us, we can hit them with everything we've got. It was a gamble that went against every military tradition in the galaxy. But as the Devourers approached and found an enemy that fought like nothing they had ever encountered, Claire began to hope that humanity might actually have a chance to do what no one else had managed: fight the unfightable and win. Colonel Dana Reed crouched behind the twisted remains of what had once been a Zephyrian command bunker, watching the chaos unfold across the battlefield of Procyon Prime. 3 days of fighting had turned the planet's surface into a hellscape of smoke and strange energy discharges. But for the first time since the war began, the good guys were winning. Alpha Team, hit Sector 7, she spoke into her communicator. Bravo Team, fall back to position 12. Charlie Team, you see that cluster of small ones near the crater? Ignore them and target the big one behind them. The orders made no sense by traditional military standards, but that was exactly the point. Dana's mixed unit of humans, Zephyrians, and Nexari had been fighting the Devourers for 72 hours using tactics that changed every few minutes. Just when the enemy started to adapt to one strategy, they switched to something completely different. Colonel, this is insane, complained Lieutenant Kex Dar, a Zephyrian officer whose 4 arms were shaking with exhaustion. We're attacking in random directions with no clear objectives. That's because clear objectives get you killed against these things, Dana replied, ducking as an energy blast scorched the air above her head. Watch and learn. She signaled to Sergeant Mike Torres, a human demolitions expert who had been improvising new explosive techniques throughout the battle. Instead of targeting the Devourers directly, Mike had been setting off seemingly random explosions that created clouds of debris and confusion. The ancient enemies, programmed to recognize attack patterns, couldn't understand what they were supposed to defend against. Torres, give us some chaos in Sector 5, Dana ordered. Mike grinned and triggered a series of charges that brought down a damaged building. The debris cloud wasn't meant to hurt the Devourers. It was meant to obscure their sensors and disrupt their coordination. While they tried to analyze the explosion, human and alien forces hit them from 3 different directions at once. The key to their success lay in the weapons they were using. Dr. Kevin Hayes and his team had worked around the clock to retrofit existing technology with Valek's chaos principles. The resulting weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Guns that fired different types of energy at random intervals, missiles that changed course unpredictably, shields that flickered on and off in patterns no computer could calculate. Captain Ryan Blake commanded the orbital support, using ships equipped with the new adaptive weapons. His vessel, the Defiance, looked like it was flying drunk as it spun and weaved through space, firing randomly in all directions. To any civilized observer, it appeared to be complete madness. To the Devourers, it was incomprehensible. Target: the large one with the tentacles, Ryan ordered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Jenny Price. Which tentacles, sir? There are dozens of them. Pick one at random. Actually, wait, don't pick. Let the computer pick randomly. No, wait again. You pick, but don't think about it. Just point and shoot. Jenny stared at him for a moment, then shrugged and fired at the first thing she saw. The adaptive weapon discharged something that looked like controlled lightning, struck the Devourer in what might have been a sensory organ, and caused the entire creature to convulse and retreat. "Sir, I have no idea what I just did," Jenny admitted. "Perfect," Ryan replied. "Do it again, but completely differently." Down on the planet's surface, Colonel Dana had linked up with Professor Alice Green, a human xenobiologist who had been studying captured devourer technology. Alice had made a disturbing discovery about how the enemy operated. "They're not just adapting to our tactics," Alice explained as they took cover in a ruined building. "They're trying to understand the logical principles behind our actions. But our actions don't have logical principles." "You mean we're winning because we're stupid?" asked Lieutenant Kexdar incredulously. "We're winning because we're human," Dana corrected. "We make decisions based on instinct, emotion, random thoughts, and half-formed ideas. The devourers can't predict that because there's nothing to predict." As if to prove her point, Sergeant Mike Torres suddenly stood up and shouted, "Hey, ugly!" at a nearby devourer before throwing a grenade that somehow managed to disable the creature's main weapon array. When asked why he did it, Mike could only shrug and say, "It seemed like a good idea at the time." The breakthrough came when Captain Tony Martinez, leading a reconnaissance unit behind enemy lines, stumbled across something extraordinary. Hidden in a cave system beneath the planet's surface, he found a cache of intact Valix weapons and equipment. "Admiral Thompson, you need to see this," Tony reported from the cave. "These aren't just weapons. They're some kind of command system." Claire left her command post to investigate personally. What she found in the cave changed everything. The Valix had left more than just weapons. They had left an entire military doctrine based on controlled chaos, complete with training programs and tactical manuals. "It's like they knew someone would find this," Claire said, studying the alien, text that somehow seemed familiar to her human mind. "They built this specifically for a species that thinks like we do." Dr. Lisa Morgan arrived from Kepler 442b to help translate the Valix records. What she found confirmed their wildest hopes and their worst fears. The Valix fought the Devourers for over a century, Lisa explained. They developed weapons and tactics specifically designed around unpredictability, but it wasn't enough to save them. "Then how is it going to save us?" asked General Ben Jackson, who had come to observe the battle personally. "Because we're better at chaos than they were," Lisa replied, showing them the ancient text. The Valix were an old, ordered civilization. Even when they tried to be random, they followed patterns. Humans don't follow patterns. We're naturally chaotic. The Valix weapons responded to human operators in ways that amazed everyone. When Sergeant Amy Chen picked up an ancient rifle, it immediately began cycling through dozens of different configurations, as if it was excited to finally have someone who could use it properly. "It's like it's been waiting for us," Amy said in wonder as the weapon transformed in her hands. "It wants to be unpredictable." Admiral Claire began implementing the Valix, chaos doctrine across all human forces. The results were immediate and dramatic. Devourer units that had been adapting to human tactics suddenly found themselves facing weapons and strategies that changed faster than they could process. The turning point came when Colonel Dana led a combined force of humans and aliens in a direct assault on the largest Devourer concentration. Instead of following any recognizable battle plan, they simply charged straight at the enemy, while changing tactics every few seconds. "Use Formation Delta!" Dana shouted, then immediately changed her mind. "No, wait! Use Formation Gamma! Actually, forget formations. Just shoot at whatever looks dangerous." The Devourers, programmed to recognize and counter military formations, couldn't understand what they were facing. Some tried to adapt to Formation Delta, others to Formation Gamma, and still others attempted to counter the random shooting. The result was confusion and vulnerability on a scale they had never experienced. When the dust settled, the Procyon system was still in human hands. For the first time since the war began, a major devourer assault had been completely defeated. The victory sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. "How did you do it?" asked Ambassador Helen Carter when she arrived to assess the situation. "We out-chaosed the Chaos Breakers," Claire replied with a tired smile. "The Devourers are designed to learn from order and logic, but humans operate on instinct and improvisation. We don't even understand our own tactics half the time." Captain Ryan summed it up perfectly during the post-battle briefing. "We won because we fought like humans instead of trying to fight like everyone else. Turns out, being unpredictable isn't a bug in human nature. It's a feature." But even as they celebrated their first major victory, disturbing reports were coming in from other parts of the galaxy. The Devourers had taken notice of human tactics and were beginning to adapt in new and frightening ways. The war was far from over, and the enemy was learning to be chaotic too. Engineer Sam Parker wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the massive Valix weapon platform hovering in the center of the research bay. 3 weeks had passed since the victory at Procyon, and humanity had been working around the clock to unlock the secrets of the ancient arsenal. What they had discovered was both amazing and terrifying. "The power output is beyond anything we've ever seen," Sam reported to Admiral Claire Thompson over the communication link. "This single platform could destroy a small moon, but that's not the impressive part." "What's the impressive part?" Claire asked from her command ship. "It thinks," Sam replied simply. "The weapon actually learns and adapts in real time. Every shot it fires is different from the last one, but somehow they're all more effective than anything we could design." Dr. Kevin Hayes joined the conversation from his laboratory on Europa Station. "We've been analyzing the neural interface requirements, and there's something strange. The weapons work best when operated by someone who doesn't think too hard about what they're doing." "You mean they work better when the operator acts on instinct?" Claire asked. "Exactly. The Valix designed these weapons for minds that could embrace uncertainty and randomness. Every other species in the galaxy has spent thousands of years developing logical, predictable thought patterns. But humans still retain the ability to act without overthinking." General Lisa Turner arrived at the research facility to oversee the Weapons Integration Project. As the newly appointed coordinator of Galactic Defense Manufacturing, she had the enormous task of mass-producing Valix technology while ensuring it remained compatible with human tactical doctrine. "How many of these platforms can we build?" Lisa asked, examining the ancient weapon. "That's the problem," Sam admitted. "We can't build them. We can only find them. The Valix scattered weapons caches throughout the galaxy, but they're all hidden and protected. It's like they wanted to make sure only the right people would find them." "The right people being humans?" "The right people being anyone who thinks like humans," Dr. Kevin corrected. "The weapons respond to a specific type of neural pattern, one that embraces chaos and uncertainty instead of trying to control it." As if to demonstrate the point, Specialist Maria Santos approached the weapon platform. Maria was a young human engineer who had volunteered to test the neural interface. When she placed her hands on the control surface, the massive weapon immediately came to life, cycling through configurations faster than the eye could follow. "It's incredible," Maria said, her eyes wide with wonder. "I can feel what it wants to do. It's like it's eager to fight, but it doesn't want to be predictable about it." The weapon platform suddenly extended several new appendages that hadn't been there moments before. Each one carried a different type of energy weapon, and they were all aimed at different targets in the test range. When Maria gave the mental command to fire, all of them discharged simultaneously, but each shot was completely different from the others. Adaptive omnidirectional assault system, Sam noted, reading the data. It can engage multiple targets with different weapon types at the same time, and each weapon automatically adjusts its output based on what it's shooting at. General Lisa was impressed, but she was also worried. This is all very exciting, but we need more than one weapons platform to fight a galactic war. How many caches have we located? 17 so far, replied Captain Tony Martinez, who had been leading the search teams. But there's a pattern to where they're hidden. The Valix didn't just scatter them randomly, they placed them along the predicted advance routes of the Devourers. Dr. Lisa Morgan joined the discussion from her continued work in the ruins on Kepler 442b. She had been decoding more Valix records and had made a disturbing discovery. The Valix didn't expect to win, she announced. Everything they built was designed as a last resort, a way to give the next civilization a fighting chance. They knew they were going to lose, but they hoped someone else might succeed where they failed. What makes them think we can do better than they did? Asked Admiral Claire. Because we're not them, Lisa replied. The Valix were an ancient, ordered civilization. Even their chaos was organized. But humans are naturally chaotic. We don't just use randomness as a tactic. We live it as a way of life. The truth of her words became apparent as more human operators began working with the Valix weapons. Each person who used the technology discovered something new about its capabilities. The weapons seemed to adapt not just to the tactical situation, but to the personality and thought patterns of whoever was using them. Sergeant Amy Chen found that her weapon platform specialized in defensive systems that changed configuration constantly, making it impossible for enemies to predict how to penetrate her shields. Lieutenant Rick Davis discovered that his platform preferred overwhelming offensive bursts that came from unexpected directions. Each human operator developed a unique relationship with their weapon that no computer could analyze or replicate. It's like they're not just weapons, observed Dr. Alice Green during her study of the technology. They're partners. They work with the operator's natural instincts instead of trying to impose logical patterns. But the most important discovery came when engineer Sam Parker found the central control system hidden deep within the largest Valix cache. It wasn't just a weapons cache. It was a command center designed to coordinate the entire ancient arsenal across the galaxy. There are hundreds of weapon caches, Sam reported excitedly. Maybe thousands. The Valix built an entire shadow military infrastructure and hid it until someone with the right mindset could activate it. And we're the ones with the right mindset? Asked General Lisa. We're the only ones who can make it work properly, Sam confirmed. I've tried having alien operators use the interfaces, but the weapons barely respond. They work, but not with the same efficiency. The system was definitely designed for human-type thinking. Admiral Claire made the decision to begin full-scale activation of the Valix arsenal. Teams of human engineers and operators were dispatched to every discovered cache, with orders to bring the ancient weapons online as quickly as possible. The results were beyond their wildest hopes. Within 2 weeks, humanity had access to more firepower than the rest of the galaxy combined. But unlike traditional weapons, these systems got more effective the more unpredictably they were used. Human operators found themselves thinking in entirely new ways, embracing randomness and chaos as tactical advantages. We're not just using Valix weapons, Admiral Claire realized during a strategy meeting. We're learning to think like the Valix intended us to think. They're teaching us how to be ourselves more effectively. The first major test of the awakened arsenal came when the Devourers launched a renewed assault on the Altair system. Instead of the massive, predictable attack patterns they had used before, the ancient enemies tried to implement chaotic tactics of their own. They had learned to be random, but they hadn't learned to be truly unpredictable. Captain Susan Young commanded the defense of Altair Prime using a combination of human intuition and Valix technology. Her weapon platforms responded to her thoughts almost before she was aware of them herself. When she felt like the Devourers were about to attack from the left, her weapons automatically repositioned to cover approaches she hadn't consciously considered. "It's like fighting with precognition," Susan reported. "The weapons know what I'm going to do before I do, but they also know what I should do that I haven't thought of yet." The battle was a revelation. The Devourers, for all their learning and adaptation, could only mimic chaos. They couldn't truly embrace it the way humans could. Their randomness followed patterns because they were still fundamentally logical creatures trying to simulate illogical behavior. Humans, on the other hand, were genuinely unpredictable. They made decisions based on hunches, emotions, and split-second inspirations that no computer could analyze. The Valix weapons amplified this natural chaos, turning human unpredictability into a devastating tactical advantage. "We're not just winning battles," General Lisa observed as the reports came in. "We're redefining what warfare means." The Devourers spent thousands of years learning to counter every form of organized military thinking. But they never learned to counter disorganized military thinking because they didn't think it was possible. As the Altair system was successfully defended and the Devourers retreated in apparent confusion, Admiral Clare began to believe that humanity might actually have a chance to end this war. The ancient Valix had given them the tools, but it was human nature itself that was proving to be the ultimate weapon against an enemy that thought it had learned everything there was to know about warfare. Admiral Carl Brooks stood on the bridge of the flagship Invincible, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for what would either be the final victory or the last battle of their civilization. Spread across the space around Centauri, Nexus were ships from every species in the galaxy. Human vessels working alongside Zephyrian warships, Altarian cruisers, Nexari fighters, and dozens of other alien designs. All of them were now equipped with Valix Chaos weapons and human. "Tactical doctrine, fleet status report," Carl ordered. 2,347 vessels ready for combat," replied his tactical officer, Commander Janet Lee. "All weapon systems showing green. Chaos protocols are active across the entire fleet." Carl nodded grimly. 3 months had passed since humanity had taken command of galactic defense, and in that time they had won several smaller battles against the Devourers. But now the ancient enemy was making its move toward the core worlds, and this would be the decisive confrontation. "Dr. Green, what's your analysis of their approach?" Carl asked. Dr. Alice Green looked up from her sensor readings, her face troubled. "They're not just coming to fight, Admiral. They're coming to finish this permanently. The energy signatures suggest they've absorbed everything they conquered on the outer rim and converted it all into combat units. We're looking at thousands of Devourer entities, all coordinated and all adapted to counter our previous tactics. The Devourers had learned from their defeats. Their new approach was more sophisticated, more unpredictable than before. They had studied human chaos doctrine and were now implementing something that looked like organized randomness, which was far more dangerous than their original pattern-based attacks. "They're trying to out-chaos us," observed Captain Mike Stevens from his escort destroyer. "But they're still thinking about it logically. They're using randomness as a tool instead of embracing it as a way of being." Carl had to agree. The enemy had become more unpredictable, but their unpredictability followed rules. They were like someone trying to dance who had memorized all the steps but couldn't feel the music. "All ships, this is Admiral Brooks," Carl announced on the fleet-wide channel. "The Devourers think they've learned to fight like us. They're wrong. They've learned to fight like they think we fight. Today we show them what humans really look like when we stop holding back." The first wave of Devourers emerged from hyperspace like a plague of mechanical nightmares. Their ships, if they could be called ships, defied every principle of engineering. They were organic-looking masses of technology that flowed and shifted constantly, never maintaining the same configuration for more than a few seconds. "Incoming. Hostiles," announced Lieutenant Sarah Walsh from the sensor station. Admiral, they're completely random. No formation, no pattern. They're just coming at us from every direction at once." "Perfect," Carl replied with a savage grin. "They're trying to be chaotic. Let's show them how it's really done. All units, abandon formation. Repeat, abandon formation. Every ship fights independently. Trust your instincts and your weapons. Don't think, just fight." What followed was the strangest space battle in galactic history. The human fleet scattered in all directions, each ship following its captain's impulses rather than any tactical plan. To the alien crews serving alongside them, it looked like complete madness. To the humans, it felt like coming home. Captain Tony Martinez commanded his ship like he was playing a three-dimensional game of tag. He spun and dove through space, firing his Valix weapons whenever something felt right. His shots seemed random, but each one found its target in ways that defied probability. "Martinez, what's your targeting strategy?" Admiral Carl asked over the communication channel. "I point and shoot at whatever makes me angry," Tony replied honestly. The weapons do the rest. It was the truth. The Valix weapons had been designed to work with intuition rather than calculation. Human operators who trusted their instincts found that their weapons anticipated their thoughts and improved on them. The technology wasn't just adaptive, it was empathic. Captain Laura Price commanded a squadron of mixed human and alien ships, but she had given up trying to coordinate them in any traditional sense. Instead, she simply announced her feelings over the squadron channel. "I'm feeling aggressive toward that cluster on the left," she broadcast, "and suspicious about those three that are hanging back. Oh, and that big one in the middle just made me really mad for some reason." Her mixed squadron responded like a pack of hunting animals, each ship acting on the emotional cues rather than tactical orders. The Zephyrian pilots found it completely alien to their military training, but they couldn't argue with the results. The emotional coordination was devastatingly effective. Dr. Alice Green, monitoring the battle from the command ship, made a startling discovery. "Admiral, the Devourers are having trouble adapting to our tactics because our tactics don't exist from moment to moment. Each decision is made fresh, with no reference to previous actions." "You mean we're not learning from our mistakes?" Carl asked. "We're not repeating our mistakes," Alice corrected. "The Devourers adapt by analyzing patterns, but we're not creating patterns. We're creating pure novelty every second." The battle raged for hours. Ships danced through space in ways that violated every principle of naval combat. Human captains made decisions based on hunches, gut feelings, and sudden inspirations. The Valix weapons responded by creating effects that shouldn't have been possible. Energy beams that curved around obstacles, missiles that changed targets mid-flight, and shields that appeared exactly where they were needed most. Commander Janet Lee was coordinating the chaos from her position on the bridge, but her job wasn't to give orders. It was to feel the flow of the battle and share her impressions. With the fleet, "I'm getting a bad feeling about the eastern sector," she announced. "Not sure why, but something's coming." 3 minutes later, a massive devourer force emerged from hyperspace exactly where she had sensed danger. The fleet was already moving to intercept, because they had trusted her intuition over their sensors. But the devourers had learned more than anyone expected. As the battle progressed, they began implementing their own version of chaos doctrine. Instead of following predictable attack patterns, they started making seemingly random decisions. The difference was subtle but crucial. They were simulating chaos rather than living it. "They're getting better at this," observed Captain Rick Davis, as he dodged an attack that came from a completely unexpected direction. "They're starting to feel more dangerous." That's when Dr. Alice Green made the discovery that changed everything. Deep in the devourer formations, she detected something that made her blood run cold. "Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the largest enemy unit. It's not just a weapon. It's some kind of conversion system. They're trying to turn our chaos against us." Carl studied the readings and realized what the devourers were attempting. They were building a device that could analyze chaos and convert it into order. If they succeeded, they could turn human unpredictability into their own strength. "All ships, priority target," Carl announced. "That big ugly thing in the center of their formation. It has to be destroyed before it finishes whatever it's doing." But as the human fleet moved to attack the conversion device, they discovered that the devourers had learned one final, terrible lesson about human tactics. They had learned to sacrifice themselves. Smaller devourer units began throwing themselves at human ships, not to destroy them but to delay them. The ancient enemy had finally understood that sometimes the most effective tactic was to lose everything, to achieve a single objective. "They're buying time," realized Captain Susan Young as she fought through waves of suicidal attackers. "Whatever that thing is doing, they're willing to sacrifice their entire force to protect it." Admiral Carl made the hardest decision of his life. "All ships with clear shots at the central target, take them now, regardless of cost. Everything else is secondary." The final phase of the battle became a desperate race. Human ships pushed their chaos doctrine to its absolute limits, making decisions that bordered on insane. They rammed enemy vessels, used their own ships as weapons, and took risks that no sane military mind would consider. In the end, it was Captain Tom Rodriguez who made the difference. His ship was too damaged to continue fighting, but he was close. Enough to the Devourer conversion device to make one final run. Instead of following any logical attack pattern, he simply pointed his ship at the target and accelerated while firing everything he had. "Tell my family I went out human," Tom broadcast, as his ship slammed into the Devourer device and exploded in a burst of chaotic energy. The explosion didn't just destroy the conversion device, it sent feedback through the entire Devourer network. For the first time in their existence, the ancient enemy experienced true chaos, unfiltered and uncontrolled. Their ordered minds couldn't process it. Across the battlefield, Devourer units began shutting down or flying in random directions. Their perfect coordination collapsed as chaos contaminated their shared consciousness. The battle was won, but Carl knew this was just the beginning. The real war was still ahead, and now both sides understood what they were truly fighting for. The right to define what intelligence meant in a chaotic universe. When it struck the central entity, the effect was immediate. The ancient consciousness, which had maintained perfect order for millions of years, suddenly found itself thinking random thoughts. Its careful calculations dissolved into confusion. Its perfect control over the Devourer units collapsed. Across the galaxy, Devourer entities stopped in mid-flight and began behaving like confused animals. Some simply shut down. Others began wandering aimlessly through space. A few even started, displaying what looked like curiosity about their surroundings. "The control protocols are breaking down," Dr. Alice Green reported in amazement. "The central entity is losing its ability to maintain order. It's becoming random." The transformation was visible even to the naked eye. The massive structure at the galactic core began changing shape, its perfect geometric forms dissolving into organic curves and impossible angles. For the first time in its existence, the entity was experiencing chaos from the inside. But instead of being destroyed by the experience, something unexpected happened. The entity began to adapt. Its consciousness, freed from the rigid constraints of absolute order, started exploring new possibilities. It began to understand that chaos wasn't a disease to be cured. It was another form of beauty. "It's learning," Dr. Lisa Morgan announced with wonder. "The entity is learning to appreciate unpredictability." The war ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The central entity, now experiencing the joy of random thought, recalled all its Devourer units and began reshaping them into something new. Instead of agents of order, they became explorers of possibility. Commander Susan Young was appointed as the first human Supreme Admiral of the new Galactic Defense Force, tasked with maintaining the balance between order and chaos that the galaxy had achieved. Dr. Lisa Morgan established the Valix Institute, dedicated to preserving the lessons learned from both the ancient warning and the human response to it. The galaxy had learned that intelligence wasn't about achieving perfect order or perfect chaos, but about finding the balance between them. Civilizations needed both structure and creativity, both logic and intuition, both predictability and surprise. As the combined fleet began its journey home, Captain Tony Martinez looked out at the stars and marveled at how different everything looked now. The galaxy was still vast and mysterious, but it was no longer empty of possibility. Somewhere out there, former Devourer entities were probably discovering the joy of making art, or the pleasure of telling jokes, or the satisfaction of solving problems in completely new ways. What do you think the Valix would say if they could? The galactic core had never seen anything like the massive fleet converging on its ancient heart. Ships from every surviving civilization in the galaxy moved through space in formations that would have seemed impossible just 1 year ago. Human vessels led the way, their crews operating on pure instinct, while alien ships followed patterns that trusted emotion over logic. Captain Tony Martinez guided his heavily modified destroyer through the asteroid field surrounding the galactic center, his Valix weapons humming with anticipation. 3 days had passed since the victory at Centauri Nexus, but the celebration had been short-lived. Deep space sensors had detected something that chilled the blood of every military strategist in the galaxy. "Contact report," Tony announced, to the fleet. "The core isn't empty. There's something massive down there, and it's been waiting for us." Dr. Alice Green studied the sensor readings from her position aboard Admiral Carl Brooks's flagship. What she saw defied explanation. At the very center of the galaxy, where the ancient black hole should have reigned supreme, something else had taken residence. "It's not a ship," Alice reported, her voice tight with fear. "It's not even a structure. It's like someone built a brain the size of a solar system." The readings were beyond comprehension. The entity at the galactic core was generating energy patterns that suggested massive computational power. It was thinking on a scale that made planetary civilizations seem like individual neurons in a vast mind. The original devourer, Admiral, Carl realized. The source of all the others. They weren't independent creatures. They were extensions of this thing. Dr. Lisa Morgan's voice crackled through the communication system from her research vessel. She had been analyzing Valek's records throughout the journey to the core, and her latest discovery explained everything. "The Devourers aren't weapons," Lisa announced. "They're antibodies. This central entity is some kind of universal immune system designed to maintain order in the galaxy. When civilizations become too chaotic, it sends out the Devourers to restore balance." "Balance?" asked Commander Janet Lee incredulously. "It's been destroying entire species." "From its perspective, it's been curing a disease," Lisa replied grimly. "Chaos, creativity, unpredictability. To this entity, those are symptoms of malfunction. It's trying to create a perfectly ordered galaxy where everything follows predictable patterns." The implications were staggering. The central entity wasn't evil in any human sense. It was simply following its programming to maintain cosmic order. But its idea of order meant the death of everything that made life worth living. "All ships prepare for final engagement," Admiral Carl announced. "We're not just fighting for our survival anymore. We're fighting for the right of intelligent life to be unpredictable." As the fleet approached the galactic center, the entity became aware of their presence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of new Devourer units began emerging from the cosmic structure, but these were different from anything they had faced before. They moved with perfect coordination, as if controlled directly by the central mind. "New contacts," reported Captain Susan Young from her scout position. "These ones aren't trying to be chaotic. They're using pure order as a weapon." She was right. The new Devourers attacked in formations so perfect they seemed mathematical. Every movement was calculated, every shot precisely aimed. They had abandoned their attempts to mimic chaos and returned to their original nature as agents of absolute order. "They're beautiful," whispered Lieutenant Sarah Walsh as she watched the enemy formations. "Terrible, but beautiful. It's like watching the universe itself trying to impose perfection." The battle that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. On one side, perfect order, formations that never broke, tactics that never failed, strategies that accounted for every variable. On the other side, pure chaos, humans and their allies fighting with instinct, emotion, and inspiration. Captain Laura Price found herself in direct combat with a Devourer formation that moved like a living equation. Every time she tried to outmaneuver them, they calculated her next move and countered it perfectly. Traditional tactics were useless against such mathematical precision. "I can't beat them by thinking," Laura realized. She closed her eyes and let her hands move over the controls without conscious direction. Her ship began dancing through space in patterns that had no logical basis. The Devourers, for all their computational power, couldn't predict movements that weren't based on any plan. All across the battlefield, human crews were learning the same lesson. Logic couldn't defeat perfect logic, but illogic could confuse it. Emotion could surprise it. Chaos could overwhelm it. Dr. Alice Green made a crucial discovery as she monitored the central entity's energy patterns. "Admiral, the core is trying to analyze our tactics, but our chaos is causing feedback loops in its processing systems. It's like we're giving it indigestion." "Can we use that?" Carl asked. "Maybe, if we could somehow inject pure chaos directly into its core systems," Engineer Sam Parker, monitoring the conversation from his position near the Valix control systems, suddenly had an inspiration. The ancient weapons aren't just chaos generators, they're chaos amplifiers. If we could link them all together and focus their output, the plan that emerged was insane, even by human standards. They would use the entire Valix weapons network as a single massive chaos generator, aimed directly at the central entity's core consciousness. It would either disrupt the entity's ordered thinking or destroy every ship in the fleet. "It's suicide," protested General Lisa Turner from her command vessel. "No," Admiral Carl replied calmly. "It's human." The linking process required human operators throughout the fleet to synchronize their chaotic thinking. It should have been impossible. How do you coordinate randomness? But humans had been doing the impossible for months now. Captain Tony Martinez felt the link establish itself as his consciousness touched those of hundreds of other human operators. They weren't thinking the same thoughts, but they were feeling the same feelings: determination, defiance, and a fierce joy in their own unpredictability. "All operators on my mark," announced Dr. Sam Parker. "Don't try to aim. Don't try to control the output. Just be as human as you possibly can." The moment came when the central entity realized what they were attempting. Its response was immediate and desperate. Every Devourer unit in the galaxy suddenly changed course and began racing toward the galactic core. The entity knew that if the humans succeeded, everything it had worked to achieve would be undone. "Now!" Sam shouted. Hundreds of human operators released their conscious control and let pure chaos flow through the linked Valix weapons. The result was beyond description, a wave of pure unpredictability that swept through space like a cosmic storm.